All right, Peace Code Keepers. We're in for a nice conversation today. I have Minister Zumbi on the foundation. Peace, bro. Uh, hey, and check this out. I got my good brother Conrad from the Beach Brothers Show. He's going to tap in. Hey, we want to talk about President Trump and his comment about black jobs. Yo, it's interesting, but it doesn't stop us. Because for real, we need to get on code. All right, welcome to Get on Code, the Fly Guy Show, which is a series of melanated conversations focused on empowerment, health, wealth, and knowledge of self.
People think in binary choices because they are conditioned to.
And on the wall was a picture of a wolf and a lion. I think the wolf was the Democratic Party, the lion was the Republicans.
But the drug trade and all these illegal stuff that people do, that's still economics. It's just that they couldn't do it in a traditional system.
We're talking about melanated wealth.
So we can build wealth, but we just, for some reason, don't seem to be able to transfer it.
You had a great experience. Fine. That means nothing.
What were you told as a child about education? You had to be how many times better?
Every impression without an expression becomes depression.
All right, Code Keepers, we're back, and we're talking tonight about President Trump and his statement about black jobs. Let's start off with our Beach brother, Bro Conrad, man. When you heard or when you saw the comment that President Trump made about black jobs, what were your thoughts?
I didn't initially respond mentally. I was doing a live show, just trying to get my thoughts in the moment. I had on another guest who ended up being pretty Republican, so I was trying to fight that back as well. So I hear it, and I think he also touched on Latin jobs too, or Latino jobs. And I'm just in the moment trying to get to the next thing, because then up to that point, I was just riding Biden's not doing as well as I want him to do. So that was on my mind. So I hear about this mainly the next day or something like this. Hey, he made a comment about black jobs. So we're hearing Trump said this. So what does this mean? There's got to be a negative because he said it. So I'm reacting mainly not live, but in the sense that now we're talking about it a few days later. And maybe I don't initially have the opinion that it is as bad as that was seemed based on the media feed I was watching. So I want to let you guys start a little bit, and I can try and piggyback off to see if I need to think about it in a different way.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I first heard it, it took me back to some of the information and conversations I had while I was starting to build consciousness. And I'm going to hold off on my comments for a minute. Zombie, bro, I know you got some good to say. Yeah, unmute your mic. And we're going to have a hop-on show. So we have John Gantz, who's in the green room right now. We're going to bring John in just a few minutes, allow him to share his viewpoints. We're going to allow some folk to hop on, Zombie. I know we normally don't do this, but we'll see how things work out, man. We'll see how things work out. But Zombie, with your background in finance, economics, jobs, you know, when you heard Trump make that comment about black jobs, which I'm going to pull up in a second, what were your thoughts?
First of all, what the hell is a black job? Let's just start there. Okay. What is a black job? And this is the problem I have with black folks who want to get into American politics like this. I was listening to, who was it? I think it was Dr. Neely Fuller earlier this morning. And one of the things he talked about was the importance of African people to be logical, because logical thinking African people are very dangerous. Okay. Not only that, before we came on the air tonight, I pulled up a classic that everybody should read, is Powernomics. And one of the things that Dr. Claude Anderson talks about is what are the three elements of a functional community. And here are the three that he mentions. First, they should have an independent economy that is wholly owned by residents of the community and provides consumer products, services, businesses, and employment opportunities. Second, they should have an active code of conduct and group accountability. Third, they should have a form of governance that collectively speaks for the residents and is capable of applying political pressure to outside groups. Now, if we would have followed that piece of advice from Dr. Anderson, would we even have to deal with this question? Okay, because
No.
I've been saying this for years, is
No.
that, and what I've been saying for years, and I think Minister Farrakhan said it beautifully, politics without economics is symbolism without substance. So if we had our own, would we even be worried about what, you know, a bunch of geriatrics were saying in a presidential debate?
A bunch of geriatrics?
Yeah. Think about it. You've got a geriatric on one side and a whoremonger on the other. That's the choice.
Okay, didn't expect you to go there, Zumbi. I did expect you to bring some Dr. Claude Anderson and some other stuff like that. The whoremonger and the geriatric. Didn't expect that. Didn't expect that. All right. Talking about things we didn't expect. Were you finished, bro? Were you finished with your intro?
Well, what I'm getting at is this. So when Trump talks about a quote unquote black job, what does that really mean? Okay. What does it really mean? Because what I see in this, and that's why I call it American politics, is now you're going to play this divisive game where you've treated us like a wet food stamp for all these years. Now, all of these so-called migrants who are coming across the border, now you want to play this fear game where now you're trying to make someone who is trying to find a better way of life my enemy. He's not my enemy. I'm like Muhammad Ali. The VCs have never called me blank. Okay. Not to mention the fact that Trump will never tell you about U.S. foreign policy and why those migrants are being chased out of their homelands to America. But that's a different story, and I digress. The other thing that Trump doesn't tell you, and I'm glad Mark Cuban said this, he says the one thing that Trump can never stop is technological advancement. So what happens when automation and robotics renders these migrants obsolete and irrelevant and renders us obsolete and irrelevant?
Okay, that's the zombie I was expecting. Whoa. Okay. Wow, you just brought it, bro. That's something to consider. So, President Trump said the fact is his big kill, and he was saying he was speaking about President Biden. His big kill on black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now. And he said that during the debate on CNN. He also said that on a town hall. Well, coming to represent from the HBCUs is the brother John Gant. John Gant, welcome to the Get On Code show. I'm looking forward to hearing what you bring to the table, good brother. What are your thoughts? When you saw this, when you heard this, what do you think?
Well, first, let me say good evening and thank you for the invite. And I didn't graduate from HBCU. I just proudly wear this shirt. Although I did graduate from 2 other colleges, I didn't go to the HBCU, so I want to put that out there. I enjoyed what Zumbi just said. That just had to make me laugh. But I will say that Zumbi we have already been down that road where we had our own businesses. We have been down that road where we had our own cities. Of course, we always talk about Tulsa, but we can talk about Wilmington and places like that where blacks had made progress. But every time we make progress, then there is a group of people that want to take that away from us. And it's sad to say that we don't seem to be able to get. We can't get that extra step ahead. We always get kicked back a little bit. I think that what Trump did was pander, and he pandered to that. I don't even want to say 1% of people that supposedly are going to vote for him that look like you and I. I haven't met those people, and I'm 67 years old, and none of those people have walked in front of my face and told me they're going to vote for him. I haven't heard that. I live in the state where those 30 million people are supposed to be coming across the border. Well, I can tell you that's not happening. That was just a straight out lie. I wish that somebody would check him at the time it happened. Every time he opened his mouth, then, as Zumbi said, we have a geriatric person and the other gentleman. If somebody just said, "Well, you're lying," and then as soon as he starts to do it again, you just say, "Well, there you go again. You're lying again." I don't know what black jobs he's trying to talk about. We got a Miss Black Texas the other day. A black lady for Texas from Eritrea, I believe. I think they're going to be changing the rules of how they do the Miss Texas contest next year, because they're not going to allow that to happen. They don't want that to happen.
You know, it's interesting how the rules, they migrate. The rules have migration. The rules do migrate depending upon things that happen with the melanated. That's an interesting piece. Hey, I probably need to drop this jewel in the conversation. We're neither on this show. This show was all about Black empowerment. So even though we're kind of dealing with a little bit of a political topic tonight, we're not pro-Trump. We're not pro-Biden. We're pro-us. And, Conrad and, John, I'm not sure where your politics lie, John. I know where Conrad's politics lie. So you are who you are, you support who you support, and that's good and favorable. The show is about empowerment. So for those who are new to the show and, watching for the first time, this is not a pro-Trump or a pro-Biden or a pro-anybody politically show. We're just talking about a trending topic as it relates to the melanated. I love that cash machine that just came in. I want to say this, when I started getting involved in conscious thought, this was circa 84, 85. A lot of the elders used to share with us that there was a time in America where if you look like us, if you came from a melanated country, if you came from Africa, if you came from Trinidad and Tobago, if you came from Jamaica, if you came from Cuba, if you were black from Cuba, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, then they weren't really letting you in the United States of America. And then during the civil rights movement, some of the benefits of the civil rights movement is we really pressured the government officials to allow people who were us, our family, from other parts of the globe to come into the great United States. Well, while we thought we were fighting for the benefit of everybody, civil rights, our elders taught me during that time period that one of the unfortunate aspects of that movement to push policy to make sure that it was equity in immigration is it allowed people who came from these other countries to really think that coming into this country placed them ahead of us. So while we were fighting for the rights for our immigrant families to come here to our country, when they came over, they didn't necessarily jump involved in the rights. They didn't get involved in the civil rights and the Black empowerment movements as heavily, to the larger degree they did, because they were coming from poor countries with fewer opportunities. We fought for them to get here. They get here and they just went straight for the opportunity while we're still reeling from the scars and the battering that we took trying to make a way for everybody else. So our elders shared with me during 1984, 1985, 86, really heavily in the 90s, that there were jobs that were traditionally set up for blacks in America, right? And then there were jobs in America that Chinese people traditionally got. You know, there was a long time where when the Chinese immigrated here to the United States of America, that they didn't allow them to teach. They didn't allow them to have government jobs. So they were really pressured into having restaurants and service industry like laundromats and other service industry type things. When the Irish came here, the Irish were kind of pigeonholed into certain jobs, which were service-based at first. And then when the Irish became white, then they were allowed to work in some of the service-based protection, you know, the enforcement arm of evil supremacy, the police department, the fire department. And so it's interesting that most of the immigrant groups who have come to the United States of America have gotten their traditional jobs. So if you say right now, what's a job for Ethiopian, or what's a job for an Arab or Arabian person, right? You're thinking 7-Eleven. You're thinking hotels, right? If you say, what's a traditional job for a Chinese person in the United States of America? You're thinking food restaurants. You're thinking laundromats. And there was a time that the black jobs that we were able to have access to, were those that dealt with farming, that dealt with labor. You know, we were breaking the ground so we can make the highways. You know, there's this lie that goes around that the Japanese built the rail stations, you know, the train station process here in America. It was first, you know, the melanated, the blacks, the African Americans, the indigenous, the Indians that looked like us, whatever term you want to rock with. It was us that built them. And then the Japanese who immigrated here finished them. So there's always been an interesting point where we could say that there were traditional jobs, and there were traditional jobs for us. And then we started pushing our way through the civil rights movement, through some other movements, into saying, hey, federal government, you can't keep us out of these jobs because of our race. Right. So there was a traditional black job. And it's interesting that Trump would pick up on that old information. Because like you were saying, John, I think he's trying to pander to us.
I wonder if I can pick up where that left off, because Brother Minister Zuby had a good point about AI and what that means now in terms of great replacement of jobs in America right now. And the long-standing belief for decades was that new immigrants are replacing many who are in the job force already. So that becomes like a new version of that. I'm not entirely sure if when Trump was speaking that he meant specifically the greater symbolism behind a black job, so much as like the way people think about that. Like there is a disparity between black economic power, black jobs, say in the city of Virginia Beach, which in the past few years had that economic disparity study that came up, and it focused on trying to better the ratios of black jobs in the city of Virginia Beach. So if that is touched on, like in a news aspect, they're probably not going to call it black jobs.
Wait. Brokan, that economic disparity that you just talked about, that study dealt with black-owned firms.
Yes.
So they weren't necessarily jobs. These were business people.
Right. To which case it said, I'm looking at old news from the city of Virginia Beach about it, and they were underutilization of minority-owned, women-owned. So again, they're just trying to talk about it from an abstract, like, hey, we are politicians. We want to do X, Y, and Z about fixing this wrong. I wonder if Trump in that moment thought that he can bash Biden by saying that he's letting in so many immigrants, it's going to take black jobs, that he's trying to hit Biden with that, not knowing that there's other deeper meanings to this. Maybe he was just too ignorant of that fact.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Hey, I want to let everybody know tonight's a hop on show. So, John Gantz, I'm sorry. And like John, he's a guest tonight. He popped in and we allow you to hop in. So if you click the link, if you look at the very bottom, you'll see the link. And if you click that link, you can hop on the show. Like Katrina, I would love to have you drop your jewel on the show tonight. So if you're so inclined, Code Keepers, click the link, join us. We'd love to hear from you very quickly. And we have our conversation. Tonight's a real good discussion. Black jobs. And was Trump right? Was Trump's statement racist? Does it even really matter? Let's chat about it. Hey, John, man, why don't you give us your last thoughts, and we'll let you continue watching the show. Any last thoughts you want to say, brother?
Well, no, I guess I've said what I'm going to say with regard to Trump's pandering to the black man or the black people in order to get their vote. So politics has to play a play in that, because that's exactly what was happening at the time. It was a debate. So politics played into that. He said they took black jobs. I don't understand what a black job is, because I don't know what I got. My degree was never in a black job. It was in a job. Unfortunately, I believe what you're saying also, that they're trying to pit two or three minority groups against each other. But we're the ones that have to. You said your elders told you. Well, I'm one of those elders. And I lived that time period. So in that time period, we did have menial jobs. We took whatever we could take. My mother may be cleaning somebody's house. Somebody else may be working the fields. I may be pulling watermelons out the fields, because they wouldn't allow us to have anything else. And that, as I said, at the time that we did finally get to that point where we thought we had reached the pinnacle and done what we were supposed to do, had our own towns, saved our own money, had our own banks, they found a way to get rid of that, whether it be burn them down or tear them down. And when you spoke about the Asians having their donut shops or laundromats, or the Arabs having their shops, well, their money is kept inside their community. For some reason, we don't do that. We don't keep our money in our community. We pay our money out to Best Buy.
I have stock in Best Buy, so get your Best Buy stock. No, I'm not promoting them there yeah. But here, you're making a great point. You know what, John? Stick around, man. We'd love to continue chopping it up with you. But you said something that Zumbi has taught us about before. So I think, Zumbi, you use the term cultural cohesion as a reason why the resources, the money, remains in the Asian community, the Hispanic community, the German community, the Greek community a little longer, while ours doesn't.
Yeah, and this is where, and I think it was Professor James Smalls who says, when you understand history, it's not a mystery. When you look at historically, okay, we're basically the only group that has been dragged here as basically POWs. Okay, everybody else came to this country by choice, and they came with what I call an uninterrupted cultural cohesiveness. Not only that, they still had connections back to whatever their respective homelands were. So they're able to not only keep money within the communities that they created here, but be able to send monies back home. Okay. Whereas for those of us here who are descendants of those POWs, we were basically isolated from the rest of the African world community and had to take this beast on solo. All right. So it's kind of like an apples and oranges comparison. Now, when you get into the whole thing about quote unquote black jobs, I direct you to a book written by Jeremy Rifkin called The End of Work. And specifically, I want to direct you to chapter 5, which is called Technology and the African American Experience. So before this whole hysteria of the boogeyman about immigration, let's look at how technology has rendered us obsolete in terms of a labor force. Okay, if we go into the South, how were we rendered obsolete when technology began kicking in with the cotton picking machine and other forms of technology? When we go into the North, when we go into the Midwest, when we look at situations where especially the factories, especially the car factories, when you can create machinery that can give you the same productivity as a human being for a fraction of the cost and without the headaches that human beings bring with them, it's a no-brainer. So when Trump was sitting up here saying, I'm bringing jobs back to America, what jobs are you bringing? Okay, even if you did bring those jobs back to American shores, technology is rendered and obsolete. So that's why when you walk into a KFC, I don't even talk to human beings anymore. I'm directed to a kiosk. Okay, so this whole thing about black jobs, let's remember historically how technology has been used to render us obsolete as a labor force.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Before anyone responds to what Zumbi just shared, I want to bring up some things. The good Queen Katrina, she always drops some gems. I love it. Love you, sis. She says your job is a black job. Black jobs are every job in this country. Black jobs are those jobs that we will not get because lower wage foreigners will be preferred. That's interesting. All right. She also said it's time for the Republicans. I should probably say Republicans to look at us. We are not property of the Democrats. All right. She also said no one talks about Asian jobs, and I would like for all four of us to kind of respond to this statement. No one talks about Asian jobs. No one talks about Asian jobs. Well, I just did, but John, what were you going to say?
Well, I will say that in my area in Texas, a lot of the, believe it or not, a lot of the donut places, of course, a lot of the Asian food places are run by the Asian people, but they have their own church foundation here. They have their own lending institutions here. So therefore, they're able to keep their money inside their community. And when somebody wants to borrow and build something, or they want to hand something down to their children, they've already gotten some inheritance or something there that they can inherit that we did not get a chance to get. And as far as what Zumi was talking about, the jobs being out there, the smaller jobs, not the big jobs. You know, we came in here raising this country by picking cotton, hay, whatever they wanted us to do. And then we decided that was a good thing. Eventually, you people in Portsmouth thought that, hey, you know what? We know how to build ships. We'll build ships for 30 years. And that became a great job for black people to get. And the families start saying, well, I hope you get a job at the shipyard. In North Carolina, it was the hosiery factories, the tobacco factories. That was the 30-year job that you lived at. You didn't get the doctor, lawyer, and Indian chief job. And they kept that mentality for so many years. It's just till probably the last 30, 40 years that I've watched just start to switch, and more people go to school and become, just like I have on my shirt, the doctors, the lawyers, and the Indian chiefs. Before then, it was the people that were working menial labor tasks. And I think that, again, Trump was just pandering and trying to put people against each other. And unfortunately, it will probably work for some people.
Yeah, you're just right. You know, Trump didn't say anything about Asian jobs. Why not, Conrad? Why didn't Trump talk about Asian jobs? He just talked about blacks and Hispanics. Why?
As I was listening, I did a little Google searching. I just wanted to know what the Asian population in the United States was. And Google gave me a number of recent as 2022 that it's 19.12 million Asian Americans. And remember, that's not just Chinese, all the Asian communities lumped together, compared to the black population in the United States, which is 41.57 million. So it's more than double the Asian American population. So it's a voting bloc issue. It's worth fighting over in terms of both Biden, I guess, trying to hold on to the idea that the Democrat Party is a monolith that the black population will vote Democrat for that reason. And Trump believes that he can chip away at it. Hence why he would say something like that, because he thinks that that is a population that he can just garner votes from. But if you're asking us, no one speaks about Asian jobs, it could be because the population is smaller. I'm just speculating.
All right, Zumbi. Zumbi, you know, no one talks about Asian jobs. Why does it be that way?
To me, it's a case of low-hanging fruit. Okay. You're never going to, and this goes back to what I've talked about on this show for years. Okay. The statistics that were mentioned about populations. Okay. It's really not so much of a voting bloc per se. Okay. And I think it was Kwame Ture who said it. The problem is we are out organized. How organized are we? Not just politically, but economically. And this goes back to what I've been preaching for years about what good is it for you to get into a political game with no resources of your own. And like I said at the top of the show, if we were more economically organized, and the other thing that I keep hearing is about jobs, but yet the immigrants who did come to this country flip those jobs into dominating industries. Okay, so if East Indians came in, all right, they got the jobs, but they never stayed at those jobs. They moved into a position to where they could begin to get a piece of the hospitality industry. Okay, when Mexicans came over and the Cubans started coming over and they started getting a piece of the construction industry, they didn't stay at jobs. And for us, we seem to have stayed at jobs for whatever reason. And there are a number of factors, external and internal, but we never graduated beyond having a job into finding a way to get a market share of an industry or to dominate an industry where we have a significant presence. Okay. So I think somewhere, like Bugs Bunny says, we made a wrong turn in Albuquerque and we're paying the price for it.
So, Mr. John, going forward from this debate, let's say Biden was a little bit more with his feet under him rhetorically. How should he have countered on that? Because you got to remember that it's also the fact that they're two old white dudes.
Was that directed to?
Mr. John Gantz.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Going first.
I tell you, I'm one of those elders. I'm one of those old people you have to listen to.
Mr. Gantz, sorry.
How should he have countered?
Yeah.
I wish he had taken the time to call the lie a lie. And I wish that the moderators, instead of standing there and just listening to it, called a lie a lie. The problem is we have normalized the way Mr. Trump talks. And the country is seems to be, I mean, there is a group of people that are comfortable with, well, you know, he's just being Trump. But that's not helping the country. You know, that's not helping us. You have to call it out where when somebody says something wrong and you know good and daggone well it's wrong, then you need, and you have the proof that it's wrong, then you need to call out it being wrong. Because people live now, they live in this 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute sound bite, and then they'll move on. If you watch it on TV, the commentators will start with something, you'll see the people come after them real hard, and the commentators will, thank you, Mr. Gantz. Well, next thing we're going to talk about is this. But you never answered or got the question, Conrad. You never got the answer to the question. Trump never answered any of his questions. He just kept spewing out stories.
In a sense, that's kind of his, not his shtick, but also kind of his strength, because that just fuels his base. He just ponders like that.
Yeah. But had they called him out at the time, if people call him out at the time that he does it and can prove it, then you have two diverging opinions. Right now, you got Trump saying this, and you have Biden sitting there quietly. And I think as Democrats, I have no problem saying, yes, I am a Democrat, but I'm American first. I wanted to be a United States, not a red state, not a blue state, but a United State. And I'm saying that being a ex-military person, which I can tell you, like you were talking about Muhammad Ali, I've been to places where they hadn't done anything to me, but I'm there to supposedly protect the United States. So I wanted to be a United States, not a combination of red and blue states fighting each other, because we've already been through that once.
All right, Brother John, man, thanks for your comments and your thoughts.
Thank you for inviting me late. Thank you. And I'm watching Katrina. Katrina, I enjoyed watching your comments too. But I appreciate, and I hope I get another opportunity. Thank you, Conrad, for allowing me to know about this. Y'all have a great holiday.
Catch you next time.
All right. Hold on. Is the 4th of July a holiday? Is the 4th of July a holiday? That's interesting.
That could be its own show topic.
For who?
Yeah, for whom? Right. Yo, Katrina says Asians are allowed to discriminate. That's an interesting statement, Katrina. Come back with some more information on that. You know, what do you mean they are allowed? Who allows them? That's an interesting statement. Hey, look, we're talking about what President Trump said, right? We're talking about what he said. They're taking black jobs and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
That whole second half is nonsense.
Or is it?
No, I meant when he says you haven't seen it yet, or you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in history. He could interchange topics. It doesn't have to be about this anymore. He'll say something that tries to gin up fear. The main issue is his first sentence. And again, did he say something accurate, but he meant something else? Or was he completely just trying to jab with Biden there, hoping that the CNN anchors would try to back him up on that aspect? But like Katrina said, you don't want to hear the words from the media on this, because they're going to try and spin it, or at least most people would spin it to help Biden out in this situation.
But this is the problem I have, and really my problem is with the American public, because they've been conditioned to be dumbed down so much until they have no concept of history. They have no concept of understanding current events, nor do they have an understanding of, well, let's look at it. Okay. And I think it was the late Bill Russell who says that when you look at history, all empires have been built on the backs of either cheap labor or free labor. Okay. So now you've got this influx of potential cheap labor and free labor because they don't understand the American terrain. So now you can pimp this demographic because the demographic that you pimped before has gotten so wise to the game that we've rendered you obsolete. Now, we're moving into a situation, like I said before, AI, automation, and robotics. Okay, so when it renders that other set of demographics that doesn't know the terrain obsolete, guess what? They'll just kick them out of the country. So the American public has to start being smarter and start using the left side of its brain and not get drawn into emotional reactionary shock jockism. Because that's really what you're seeing is shock jockism that does nobody no good. And really, this is kind of like this. I don't think that Trump or Biden really cares about any set of demographics. Their main objective is, how do we keep this Pax Americana intact? Regardless of what it would take. It's just like what Abraham Lincoln says. He says, look, I don't care if the U.S. is a slave nation or a free nation. I'm just trying to keep the band together. Okay. And we're seeing the same thing play itself out. Everybody says history repeats itself. No, we repeat history because we didn't learn our lessons from the last episode. And it looks like we're going down this road again. In fact, I dare say this. This is, to me, one of the telltale signs of the decline of a civilization, when you start seeing internal bickering, because all nations decline internally. It's never really an external force. It's always something internally. And we're seeing, to me, we're headed down that road of the decline of what we call the Pax Americana.
All right, I had to bring up the Wikipedia definition of Pax Americana for those code keepers who are uninitiated. If you're not familiar with the term, want to make sure that you understood the term. Hey, you know me, and you know the Get On Code Show. We're all about empowerment. How does this lead to empowerment? You know, does this really matter to us? And before I do that, I want to take our time and really kind of dive into the beloved people we have on the show today. So I'm Seiko Varner, the producer of the Generational Flip docuseries. You can find my docuseries Generational Flip, episode 1, 2, and 3, just by going to Generational Flip. Generational Roots is my real estate investing firm. You can go to generationalflip.com and you can find all 3 episodes. As a matter of fact, check this out.
You will wealthier.
My wife and I were flipping our first house.
When you shift the way you see things, then your life is going to shift.
Money is a tool. Money is what you want. Money is not what you want. You don't want money.
So that goes to show that you don't have faith when you do not take your money and put it into those accounts to earn interest. When you're scared thinking that something is going to happen, God says, who are you trusting in? Because I'm the one that has created the money system.
Well, I then got offered $350 million for my company.
It says you owe about $538,000.
That the individual and the individual family unit is responsible for filling their own cups.
I went from being homeless and living on the street to owning properties in Baltimore.
And that's why I decided to start a bank.
This is something that Martin Luther King spoke about.
Stupid mistakes and failures. We continued stumbling forward
because the Black community, for the most part, had to go and rent.
All right, Code Keepers, and we're here with Minister Zumbi Shawala. My good brother Conrad is we're going to bring him back up in a second, but Zumbi is the author of the Gospel of Afro-Nomics Theology book. You see it right there on the screen. Well, you see it right there on the screen. Zumbi, give you 30 seconds, bro.
Well, it's basically what I call a Black economic blueprint for the 21st century and beyond. This is about 22 years worth of personal experience and research in areas of business, economics, entrepreneurship, and finance. It's solution oriented, so it doesn't waste time bashing other groups or other situations, because we need to have solutions that can be executed and applied at a grassroots level.
I say that, bro. Khan, man. People have seen you if they've watched some of the prior episodes. They've probably seen you on some Get on Code shows before. Back in the day. It's been a minute, so for those who are new, they're like, "Yo, who's the white brother on here?" It's Seiko. This is our Black empowerment. Why you got this white dude on here? He's my buddy. He's my brother. All right. Conrad, man, you want to say something real quick, bro? Let people know where you are, where they can find your podcast.
Mm-hmm. Currently I'm doing the Shez Who show, and I don't know if I got the brand up. Nope, different channel. Shez Who, which I just had on a show tonight about an hour before this one, where I brought on a mayor candidate from Portsmouth, Virginia. I like to talk about politics, and in the vein of tonight's topic, I think it at least starts the ball rolling on what could have been a great discussion to have if either one of the two candidates were talking about great policy that could help the Black community. But the problem with it being Trump versus Biden and making Trump out to be so evil, it means Biden, his counter, is only fighting against Trump and not providing any good alternatives on a policy front. Then the discussion is going to be wasted.
Well, you know me, I'm not Team Biden. I'm not Team Trump. Neither one of them are providing. I tell you who provides for us. We got to provide for us. We got to provide for us. Our plight will change when we change ourselves. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that back in 1927, and it still rings true today. Our plight will change when we change ourselves. So look, this is all coming back to, sales. All right, she's saying, welcome to the platform. Yeah, Katrina is dope. She's dope. And agreed. Zumbi, man. Does what President Trump said even matter? In the whole scheme of our empowerment, does it even really matter?
Coming from a Black nationalist perspective, no. And the reason I say that is because at a certain point, I go back to Billie Holiday when she says, "Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got its own." And when we begin to follow that philosophy, then debates and conversations like this won't really affect us. But I think that there's become a crisis in Negro leadership. I can't call it Black leadership. It's Negro leadership, because you're still trying to find a place at somebody else's table, as opposed to conducting yourself as a Maroon to where you go up in the hills and you build your own Colombos. Because this is really about, and I've been on this planet long enough to understand that this world operates on one premise and one premise only, and that's power. And that's what the Honorable Marcus Garvey taught. Power is the only argument that satisfies man. And so when we begin to understand that, and when we begin to understand building a power base of our own, like we did in the early 1900s with Tulsa and Durham and Rosewood and these other, what I would call independent Black communities, okay, We just need to go back and study what worked, where we failed, and then improve on the model. Okay? Because for any Negro who thinks that choosing between Satan and the devil is going to get us anywhere, it's not going to happen.
All right, pregnant pause. Hey, I brought up the term Quilombo because, Zumbi, you always use those Hampton University words, as I say. You always use those terms that people may not necessarily be familiar with. So when you said Colombo or Quilombo, a Quilombo it was a group of us who fought back in primarily Brazil that said, all right, we taking over, we're killing y'all, you tried to subjugate us, we're going to kill y'all, and we're going to create our own society. So these quilombos or war camps, quilombo literally means war camp in, I don't want to say it's Portuguese.
It's Bantu.
But it's Bantu, right. Quilombo is war camp in Bantu. So wanted to make sure that the code keepers, particularly those who are uninitiated, knew what a Quilombo was. All right. So as I've said, I don't think this matters. I think it's a distraction. I think it's pandering. And what am I saying? Let me make sure I bring back up on the board what President Trump said. I think this is pandering. Once again, President Trump, as President Biden, as President Obama, as President Bush, as President Clinton, pandered. He didn't give anything tangible. He didn't offer anything tangible. So when we look at President Trump's platinum plan, when he was running for presidency the first time against Hillary Clinton, who also didn't promise to do anything for us, he had this platinum plan. He didn't talk about the platinum plan out loud. It was on his website. And when he was in the black groups, black Republican groups, black conservative groups, we're trying to get more blacks to become Republican groups, he would talk about this platinum plan. Truly, it was cubic zirconia. It was fake. It was fugazi. It pretty much said, hey, we recognize all the problems that are happening in the black community. We're not going to talk about the reasons why they happen, but we recognize that those are problems. And we're going to fix those problems by helping everybody in the business community, in the rich community, in the investment community. And hopefully it'll trickle down to you. That was his platinum plan. Didn't really talk about it. When he was in office, he didn't institute it. President Biden talked about the Lift Every Voice plan, right? When he was in office, he didn't institute it. He's still in office. He didn't institute it. And the Lift Every Voice plan said, hey, we recognize all the problems that are happening in the black community. And you know how we're going to fix it? We're going to help everybody. And we're going to bring in more immigrants. The H-1B1 policy, which allowed people primarily from Asian countries to come to America if they had certain technological skills that America needed, then these companies could sponsor somebody and their family to come over and live and become Americans, join the melting pot. If they had the things you needed, the technical skills that America needs. So the Lift Every Voice plan lifted up everybody else, and it used us as the face of it while we didn't get anything out of it. This is why I have no dog in this fight. Because both presidents had 4 years to do something for us with their plans. Neither one of them did. Neither one of them did. So if he talks about black jobs, it's not a big deal. He was trying to get our attention when a few other quote unquote blacks, particularly men, to support Trump. That's what he was doing. And honestly, That's what he should do. Because if you're running for office, you're supposed to get as many votes as possible. And you're supposed to start trying to pick off your competitors' votes. And that's what President Trump was doing. You know, same thing when he says that junk about, I've done more for the black community than any president. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. And then I have my black Republican friends. Well, there were more blacks that were employed under President Trump. Yeah, but the employment rose under the last 2 years of President Obama. Trump did a good job of keeping it going. I'm not taking anything away from him. But did he do that for us or for the country? He didn't do it for us. There's nothing that President Trump did for us specifically. Oh, he gave all that money to the HBCUs. Tell the whole story. You know the story, Zumbi?
No.
Here's the story. So, under the Obama administration, I need to shut up because we're almost at hours. I want to bring this to a close, and we have a couple of comments. Under the Obama administration, well, let me go back. The president before Obama gave a nice chunk of money to the historically black colleges and universities, the HBCUs. President Obama came in and he lowered that money that went to the HBCUs. All colleges get money from the state. All colleges and universities get money from the federal government. If you're a Hispanic serving university, if you're a Hispanic serving organization, which means you have 20 or 21% or more Hispanic students that you serve, then you get some money too, right? So the HBCUs, if you primarily serve underserving students, that's how the HBCUs got their money, by getting the Hispanic money and the underserving students. If you do those things, then you got some money. Like I said, the president before Obama gave a nice amount. Obama lowered that amount. When President Trump came into office, he said he was going to do the same thing Obama did and just keep that low number. Now, you know what happened? Here's the funny thing. 2 senators, one of those senators was named Harris, Kamala Harris. I don't know why she didn't talk about this. Senator Harris and another delegate and another Senator Jones, I can't remember where Jones came from, said, no, we can't do this. You can't lower the money again. These colleges, these HBCUs need the money. So they pushed the committees that did the budget to really increase the amount of money that went to the HBCUs. And they did their pork, you know, when they do policy, they call this stuff pork, when they include all this other stuff that's not necessarily related. So they included all this pork, and some of the pork that they involved in this policy, in these policies, included increased funding to the HBCUs. Now, there was some things in this bundle that President Trump had promised to his supporters. So he approved the budget. And so now he gets, you know, the benefit of saying he gave more money to the HBCUs he didn't want to at the beginning. And if it wasn't for Vice President Kamala Harris pushing for it with the other senator named Jones, I can't remember where he's from, if they didn't push for it, the HBCUs would have gotten the same lowered amount of money that President Obama offered them. And the money is not guaranteed either. So they don't just get the money. It's not guaranteed. So when you hear these Trump supporters saying he gave a whole lot of money to the HBCUs, no, he was forced to. Once again, none of our presidents have done for the black community. They've done for all of America. They've done for immigrants. They haven't done for us what we've been asking for since the 1860s. A better situation when it comes to a better experience with the judicial system, you know, judicial reform, police reform, reparations for those of us who are the descendants of the enslaved Africans who were here in the United States of America, who were under enslavement, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, And those people, those of us, none of our presidents have helped us with our specific demands that we've been making repeatedly since the 1860s. Since the 1860s, Congress and the Senate keep saying, "No, we're not doing nothing for y'all. No, we're not doing nothing for y'all," and they haven't. So don't give me that junk about President Trump's done more for us. He hasn't. Let's go through a couple of comments and then bring this to a close. Katrina said, if Obama did nothing, don't expect others to offer anything. They will not talk about offering any reparations because Caucasians oppose it. They will lose the Caucasian vote. I agree.
No, it's very believable.
Yeah. Oh, so Katrina gave all the comments. I love you, Queen. Correct. This does not matter. And we have no political friends on either side. Democrats are worse because they smile in our. Well, yeah, I don't like people playing in my face. Conrad, it looks like you gave some jewels that you want me to share with the Root, an article from the Root, and also a Wikipedia link. I'll bring those up. Why don't you talk about those very quickly, and then Zumbi will let you have the last word. I talk for a long time.
Yeah. The other night I was watching a political show, Sabby Sabs, who had on someone who's running as an independent against Jim Clyburn in South Carolina. And he was referencing this very topic tonight about Trump saying black jobs. And he pointed out that article that I shared from the Root, because it goes back to, I think, 2013. And the phrasing is very similar, but it's phrasing in the idea as to what politicians could do for black jobs. So the whole tone seemed different. That's what his point was to be. So what becomes of Trump's tone? And I don't think Trump is coming from anywhere in his heart. They would have the same level of oomph that I think the Root was trying to put forth. And I learned about that great South American community of fugitive slaves, but it reminded me of the fact that we had one in the Great Dismal Swamp all those years ago. And I wanted to share that link as well. And of course, you mentioned Jones, Senator. That's Doug Jones from Alabama, who is famous because he won in 2017 for the special election out of Alabama. But in 2020, he lost to Tommy Tuberville, a football coach. So in a sense, that some of the stuff can be a waste. You could be Doug Jones fighting for some decent things and then get replaced by a football coach.
Well, we're not going to put him down because of his career as a football coach.
Right.
But that's interesting. So the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons, and that impacts us here in the Hampton Roads area. So those who are in the Hampton Roads area, check into the Dismal Swamp and learn about the history of the melanated, our people, African people, Indian people, Indigenous people, Moorish people, whatever term you want to rock with, copper-colored skin people. I know people set trip off of that. We don't. But yeah, that's some information that we want to check out. And here's that article from the Root. Can black employers cure the black job crisis? And this was published in 2012. Interesting. So, Code Keepers, we left those links to the Can Black Employers Cure Black Jobs Crisis and the Great Dismal Swamp. We left that in the show notes, or at least in the links. We'll make sure it's in the show notes as well. And welcome, Zumbi. Zumbi, last words, good brother.
I need the African world community to go back and revisit Malcolm's Ballad of the Bullet speech. Now, that speech was given nearly 65 years ago, but it still holds weight today because what Malcolm was trying to instruct us through his gospel of Black nationalism, we still didn't get the lesson yet. And we still find ourselves having Groundhog Day. So we need to revisit that particular speech. It's probably the most powerful 52 minutes you'll listen to. And when you listen to that and you apply it to today's American politics, then I think you will begin to understand what needs to be done by us as a collective. But until then, we're still going to find ourselves, as somebody said with the recolonization of Africa, we will be like spectators at the feast begging for crumbs from the table. And it seems like ain't a damn thing changed.
Code Keepers, we hope you check out The Ballot or The Bullet. I pulled up this particular YouTube link because this is one of the albums that my father bought for me when I was just coming into consciousness in 1984 and 1985. And I treasured that album. Interestingly enough, Public Enemy used to have a song, was it Welcome to the Terror Dome, or was it Rebel Without a Cause? Without a Pause. Welcome to the Terror Dome. Yeah, it's Welcome to the Terror Dome. So in Welcome to the Terror Dome, there's a lot of quotes from The Ballot or The Bullet. Hey, Katrina, peace and blessings. Keep doing your thing. May your walk continue to be a blessed walk. May all the fruits of your labor multiply and be sweet. Code Keepers, we had Zumbi on, as usual. We had the good brother Bro Khan. He's on the foundation right now. He's not on the bottom. We call that the foundation position. All right, so he's rocking the foundation every day. Go out and do some great things. And as we always say, on the Get On Code show, get on code. Share the code. Teach the code. Become the code. Our code is empowerment. And we love you. Peace.